to Food Prep Guide. Today's video is for you if you are having a hard time finding storage space for all of your home preserved foods. Maybe you're just now learning how to can, maybe you're dehydrating, maybe you're just stocking up on dried goods like beans and rice, or working into a 5-gallon bucket system, or just trying to transition into bulk food purchases. Any of those things can cause an issue with storage space in your house, right? It doesn't take long before we realize that. So one way that we are carving out space in our house is transforming a coat closet into a canning pantry, otherwise known as a cantry. I have multiple different storage spaces in my house because I, like you, like many of you probably, I don't have like a huge pantry. I don't have a spare bedroom or anything like that to build this awesome, beautiful pantry. So it's just kind of a little bit here, a little bit there. It's all about carving out space in our existing footprint, so to speak. So this entryway closet is just a few feet from our front door. It's probably pretty dirty because of that, but it's just been used for storage. It's not something that we use at all. In fact, the last time I was in here was before Christmas, getting out of Christmas decorations. So I talked to my husband and we talked about it, and he's like, yeah, let's just turn it into a pantry. So well, let me just show you what it kind of looks like in here. You can see it's pretty skinny, but it is 2 feet deep. And I'd like to show you the whole thing. Let me grab you real quick and switch you around. Okay, I just wanted to give you all a decent idea of how big this closet is. Our ceilings are about 10-foot high ceilings, and of course it goes all the way to the top. And like I said, it's about 2 feet deep. And then down here on the floor, I think I'm going to do a bottom level of 5-gallon buckets, which I will be able to fit probably 6 buckets down on that bottom. And then I'm going to start the shelves about here and then just go up from there. So let me get you sit back up on the stand, and I will get going. So we got the closet all cleaned out. I did decide to take the closet rack out. You know how closets have racks for the clothes hangers? I was on the fence about whether or not to take that out because it's already a shelf built in for me. But I did decide to take it out because when we are building storage specifically for canning jars, it is most beneficial to line your or custom the height of your shelves to the exact, with a little bit of wiggle room, height of half pints, quarts, and half gallons, whatever you're going to be using. And that shelf did not fit within those custom requirements, I guess. So I did decide to take it out. I mentioned earlier that I was going to save the floor space for 5-gallon bucket storage. And I grabbed some buckets here, and I thought I was going to get 4 buckets in the floor of this closet. But as it turns out, I could only get 2. I could only fit 2 buckets in this closet. And 2 buckets to me is not worth losing all that extra space for canning jars. I think I mentioned it before that whenever you are trying to carve out space for food storage, and especially canning jars, it helps to know what you're going to be storing there before you start the project. That way you can customize it exactly to what you're needing. So since making this bottom floor 5-gallon storage means I'm sacrificing at least 2 shelves of pint jars. So storing 2 buckets here, that's not worth losing 2 shelves of pint jars for me. So I'm scratching that plan, and I will not be storing 5-gallon buckets on the floor. So instead of 5-gallon buckets, what I'm going to do is I'm going to store my half-gallon mason jars on the floor level. Since they're the tallest jar that we have, this is what we store chia seeds in, pumpkin seeds, cranberries, and cornmeal. And this reminded me of a little tip. Whenever you are planning out your storage space specifically for canning jars, you can take your boxes that your canning jars come in and use that to measure and get an idea of how many jars deep and how many jars across that you're going to be able to fit whenever you're trying to calculate how many shelves you need, or maybe you're just trying to calculate, hey, is this project really worth it? Am I really going to be able to fit that much food in this tiny space? So I just grabbed 2 of my quart jar boxes, and they fit perfectly side by side. That tells me that I'm going to be able to get 24 jars, at least 24 jars on each shelf. You can't really see it very good, but there is space for another row of jars back behind there. So let's say 6 more jars. So 24 plus 6, 30. So that is 30 jars per shelf, and according to the height of this closet, I should be able to get about 9 shelves. So that's what's 30 jars times 9? That's 270 jars in this tiny little coat closet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this, the bottom level, the half-gallon mason jars. And the reason why I'm just mentioning that, and the reason why I'm even talking about it, is because we want to measure our height of our shelves according to mason jar size. So I have just a ruler and a pencil here. The next step is I'm just going to take my half-gallon mason jars and just getting me a good idea. I'm going to put them all the way against the side of the closet so that I can then give myself about 2 inches of wiggle room up above the jar so it's not too hard to pull the jar out. And then I'm just going to draw a line with my pencil and mark out where that bottom shelf is going to go. And now that I have that bottom shelf, I can then start going and measuring other jars. I have a pint jar here and a quart jar here. Another aspect, I guess, of trying to figure out or why it's so important to plan what you're going to be storing in here, at least a general idea, is because a lot of things are typically stored better in either pints or quarts, depending on what it is. Like pickle relish, I'm not going to store pickle relish in a quart jar. Or my pear butter, I'm not going to store that in a quart jar. Those are going to be smaller quantities. And I know that this particular closet is going to be almost solely dedicated to all of our home canned goods. So that means all of our tomato products, all of our pickle products, all of our onions, relishes, green beans, dilly beans, peas, carrots, all of those yummy things are going to be stored in this closet. And I know from my records that that is mostly going to be pint jars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a regular mouth pint jar. And the reason why that's important is because regular mouth jars are slightly taller than wide mouth jars. So if you're going to be planning your shelves according to jar size, you want to always measure with a regular mouth jar. And that's true whether it is quart, pint, or even half gallon or anything like that. So I've got a regular mouth jar here, and I'm going to do mostly pint jar sizes, and I'm going to put just a few quart jars shelves, like the height of them, up at the top. So on this bottom shelf that I just marked, I just put my ruler there, I just took a pencil and wrote a line there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pint jar, I'm going to set that on top of that ruler, which lines up with the line that I just made. And then I'm going to make another mark about 1 inch above that pint jar. Okay, I just made my mark. Now I'm going to take my ruler. Again, I'm going to line it up with that mark, and I'm going to draw another line. So now we have a shelf installed here, just barely above these half-gallon jars, and I have another shelf installed here with the pint jars. Another thing that you need to think about is the height of your actual shelving, what you're going to be using, whether it's plywood, particle board, 2x4s, whatever it's going to be. You need to consider the height of that. And okay, so that's what I'm going to be doing next. I'm just going to be going through, holding the jar on the shelf with my ruler, and then marking lines according to how I need to. So I'm going to get going on just marking out my shelf lines. I'm going to get all this stuff out of my way, and I'm going to try and set you up to where you can actually see me doing all the lines and how they line up with quarts and pints. Maybe it'll be helpful, I don't know, but let me get things rearranged and we'll get going. Okay, here I am inside the soon-to-be pantry. I realized that as I marked out my first line for the first shelf and then went to mark the second line for the second shelf, I realized I didn't take into account the depth of the actual wood that we're using as the shelves, and we are using 1/2-inch plywood. So I went ahead and erased the lines that I had here, and I'm just going to start over. I have my 1/2-gallon mason jar, a quart-size mason jar, and a pint-size mason jar. I'm still going to do the 1/2-gallon down on the floor, and then I'm going to do pints all the way up to about 3/4 of the way high, and then at the very top I'm going to leave room for the quarts, and that's because I can a whole lot more in pints than I do quarts. So I'm just going to get started. I'm going to, I'll just talk you through the very first couple of rows, and then I'll just get going and make this thing happen. So I'm just going to put my ruler up just above the 1/2-gallon jar, just enough to give me some wiggle room to make it easy to pull it out. I'm going to mark a line there, and that's going to be my first shelf. So I'm going to draw this line straight across, make it hopefully easier on my husband to line it up and drill in the shelves in just a minute. And then I'm going to take my ruler and go 1/2 inch up. I'm just going to do a small mark there. And then I'm going to then take my ruler, put that on that 1/2 inch mark, and get my first jar. Pretend to set it there on that bottom mark. Kind of eyeball it, see where we're at. About right here. And once again, I want to leave a little bit of wiggle room to make it easy to pull out the jars, but not too much, because we do want to make the best use of this space as possible. So just a little bit up. I'm going to mark a line there. Once again, draw out the line across the closet. That's where this next shelf is going to go. Try to get it as straight as possible. And I'm just going to repeat that process all the way up. Okay, we have made it up really high up into the closet. I'm on the ladder, and as you can see, here's our threshold. This threshold, or the ceiling of this closet, extends probably another 18 inches past the threshold right here. But because this threshold is right here, it means I'm not going to be able to access the jars if I bring the shelves all the way flush with the door opening, like I am going to be doing all the way down here. So at this point, I'm going to switch to quart jar height shelves, and what I'm going to do is we're only going to be bringing the shelf maybe 18 inches deep instead of the full 2 feet, and what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to access the jars past the point of this threshold. That way this space up here isn't going to be wasted. It's kind of hard, I'm probably not explaining it right, but it's kind of hard to put into words what I'm picturing, but at the end, you know, we'll be able to do like a before and after, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But since these shelves are not going to be coming all the way over here, I'm going to switch to marking my shelves from back to front instead of front to back. And like I said, I'm going to be switching to quart size jars now. So I still need to measure the depth of the plywood, which is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to set my ruler on top of that, shelf that I just marked out. Put my quart jar on top of it. I'm going to give myself some wiggle room. So I'm going to mark this at 7 3/4 inches. 7 3/4 inches for quart jar size. And I'm just going to mark out that shelf, starting at the back and bringing it forward, since I'm not going to be taking this shelf all the way to the front of the door. And I'm just going to it looks like I can get maybe one more shelf. I'm going to measure that out real quick and see if I can get one more shelf or not. First, I need to measure the depth of the plywood, which is 1/2 inch. Give myself a little wiggle room, make it a little bit more than I need to go. Yep, I'm going to be able to get one more quart jar shelf, and then that will be just enough to get me a very, very top shelf of our 1/2 pint jars, which will be perfect for our pear butter. So let me mark this out real quick. It's going to be 7 3/4 inches. And that leaves me enough room for those 1/2 pint jars, no problem. Okay. All of our shelves are marked out, so we're going to move on to the next step. Next step is to put our braces on that our shelves are going to be sitting on. We are just using 2x4 that has been cut to the depth of our closet. In our case, it's 23.5 inches. And the lines that we drew are going to be at the top of each board. And we're going to be doing the boards vertically like this. And of course, I'm going to start all the way down at the bottom, but just for demonstration purposes, I wanted to show y'all this. So here's a line that I drew for a shelf, and the wood is going to go underneath that line. And so we're just going to start the process of screwing these boards into the studs. There's a stud in the middle and then a stud at each end, so we'll just be drilling those in on both sides, and then we'll be going on to the next step. Okay, y'all, we ran into a problem, and if we had thought this through a little better, we would have realized it. But I was thinking, okay, next step is just to screw in all of the braces that the shelves are going to fit on. So we did that on both sides. You can see all this side is done. We went and did all this side and realized we're not going to be able to put the shelves in because the braces on the left-hand side block it. So we had to unscrew all of the braces on this side. And what we're going to have to do is do one shelf at a time, like put the brace on, put a shelf on, do the next brace, put a shelf on. So we have just 1/2 inch plywood that we have cut to the width and depth of the closet, which in our case is almost 2 feet by 2 feet. And we're going to have to screw in the shelf and then place the boards one at a time. So let me get you all set up so you can see that process, and we'll get going on it. Okay, y'all, we are done with this pantry, closet pantry transformation. The last step, I'm going to go get all of last year's harvest and canning jars and start putting them on my shelf, but most of it's going to be empty because we are coming up on gardening season soon. But anyway, I will get those loaded up and be back in just a second and show you the whole thing from top to bottom. Okay, y'all, here it is. Because of the extremely tight space of my entryway, I cannot get the whole closet in view, so I'm just going to start at the bottom, go up. We got 10 shelves in, plus that half-gallon jar at the floor. I don't know if you can tell the difference of the depth between this shelf and that shelf, but I remember in a previous clip trying to explain how, because of this threshold up here and how hard it was going to be to access the jars, we did this shelf more shallow than these. These came 23 inches, those are only 15 inches deep. We used 1/2-inch plywood and 2x4s, but my husband was saying it would have been better if we had just done 1x2s. It would have been cheaper, and typically, but this was mostly reclaimed wood that we just had on our property, so that's what we used. But if you were doing a project like this, I would recommend 1x2s. So as you can see, I've got my half-gallon jars down here. This is where all of our chia seeds and pumpkin seeds, dried cranberries, and cornmeal will go. And then most of these shelves are exactly the height of pint jars, which is a little bit of room at the top. I did go ahead and do one shelf down here for quarts because I remembered that we are growing a ton of green beans this year, and those need to be stored in quarts, not pints. So I have 1 quart shelf here. All of these are going to be pint shelves all the way to the top, and then those 2 shallow shelves, that's a tongue twister, at the very top will be quarts as well. But I hope y'all got some ideas from this. I mean, this was just a teeny tiny coat closet. Like I said, it was like just shy of 2 feet by 2 feet. But each shelf holds 6 jars wide and 6 jars deep, so that's 36 jars per shelf. And 10 shelves, so that's 360 jars right there, but that's not including these 2 shallow ones up there. So this, all in all, is probably around 400 to 450 capacity pantry now. Thanks to my husband. Thank you, baby. Okay, hope y'all enjoy. I'm excited for garden season.